Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Dan Hiscock, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Warrant Officer Cherie Thayers. As always, we warmly welcome the veterans who are served, those still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Return and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Service Clubs Association. And we welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of the Boys Brigade, Australia. Now, if you're able, I invite you to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
If you wish to and you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Kennion Coombs. Kennion Coombs was born on the 19th of August 1896 in St Peters, South Australia. Known as Ken, he was one of 6 children and the only son born to Robert Coombs, a wool broker, and his wife Mary. Ken received his early education at East Adelaide Public School and St Peter's College, where he was involved in the Cadets program. He was a keen sportsman and a member of the Mercantile Rowing Club. After leaving school, Ken obtained work at the Savings Bank as a clerk while studying accountancy. Ken Coombs enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 29th of December 1915. He was assigned to the 4th Reinforcements of the 32nd Battalion with the rank of private. He embarked for active service on the 9th of March 1916, sailing from Adelaide on board the troop ship Mongolia. Private Coombs arrived in Egypt, where he was transferred to the ranks of the newly formed 48th Battalion during a period of expansion in the AIF. In June 1916, his unit sailed to the French city of Marseille. From there, the men were immediately sent north to the Franco-Belgian border, which had once been a site of heavy fighting. Coombs spent the first few weeks of active service training. In August, his unit was drawn into the fighting around the village of Pozières. Here, the 48th Battalion was tasked with defending ground captured during early attacks by the 2nd Division. His unit entered the front lines on the 5th of August 1916. It came under horrendous shelling and machine gun fire from enemy lines, enduring what was believed to be the heaviest barrage ever experienced by Australian troops. Coombs was hit by shrapnel, suffering devastating wounds to his head and thigh. He was evacuated to England for treatment and remained in a Liverpool hospital until the end of the year. Private Coombs briefly rejoined his unit in the front lines in December 1916. As a bitterly cold winter began to set in, he eventually became ill and returned to hospital, this time suffering from mumps. Coombs did not rejoin his unit until the February of 1917, as German forces began their strategic withdrawal to the fortified Hindenburg Line. Allied units eagerly followed the enemy's retreat, believing the war was perhaps finally drawing to a close. It was not long, however, until the enemy withdrawal halted at their new front line, near the French village of Bullecourt. Here, the Allies planned to mount an attack to break through the German lines and capture the village. Coombs' unit attacked on the morning of the 11th of April 1917, under the cover from tanks rather than artillery. As the men jumped over the parapet, the tanks quickly proved ineffective and the attacking infantry were left exposed to murderous enemy fire. One of Coombs' comrades described the attack, writing in a letter home, "I tell you, it was hell let loose that day. Our guns opened fire at 4 a.m. and the air seemed to be on fire with shells screeching over us. Of course, Fritz took a tumble that we were going to attack and opened fire in return. It was awful. When we hopped out, the machine guns and rifles tore into us. Men were dropping all around, and when the officers saw the state of things, they ordered us to drop down. And what was left of us dropped into the shell holes and kept low. My mate had a bullet go right through his ribs, and another poor fellow who made an attempt to go back to the trenches was shot dead." Soon forced to retreat, Allies units suffered more than 3,000 casualties in one day. The battalion's commanding officer noted in the war's diary, "Had the tanks shown more pluck and initiative, I believe things would have been quite different. No words of mine can express the pride and admiration I feel for these brave men." Among the dead was Private Ken Coombs, who was last seen lying wounded on the battlefield. He was never seen again. With no known grave, his family paid tribute to him in the Adelaide Journal newspaper with a short memorial notice. His duty nobly done. Private Kennion Coombs was only 20 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Kennion Coombs, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We'll leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. Wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.